Hi, my name is Jason Lay, and this is MAD PD. My session is called Create a Blended Learning Environment while Giving Students a Voice. And I'm going to be specifically looking at the application Pear Deck. So I'm really happy that you're spending the time to listen to learning more about how to create a blended learning environment and using Pear Deck to do that. So let me give you a bit of background about myself. I teach at Vaughan Secondary School, and Vaughan Secondary School is in the York Region District School Board. And I teach a variety of subjects. I teach history, I teach business, I teach math, and actually I'm teaching international business, for example, through e-learning. And the reason I'm giving you this workshop is because I believe really strongly in the power of technology to increase student engagement and student learning. And I've been using Pear Deck for a number of years, and I really have noticed a change in my classroom in terms of participation and student engagement in my class. And I really like to share this great opportunity with you. Now, one way we can interact is by through Twitter. So if you go to Twitter and you can use the hashtag MADPD, MADPD, and at the same time, also type in my Twitter handle, which is JLay, JLAY 02. So, feel free to contact me while we're doing this presentation. So, first, let me show you how to basically um, start off with Pear Deck. And basically, if you look at the add-ons here, Pear Deck is a Chrome add-on. So you would be uploading it on your Chrome browser, and you can see that I've already uploaded Pear Deck, downloaded Pear Deck. And so once you download Pear Deck, then you would basically open it up. And then what happens is a menu of options presents itself. So if you look at the right-hand side, you can see the slide library. And I like how Pear Deck divides it into different sections in your lesson. So you have the beginning of the lesson. And if you look at the beginning, there's a lot of excellent slides where, for example, you can do diagnostics. And I'm going to go and I've incorporated some of these slides in my presentation so you'll see how it works. So for example, here, say I want to see what my students learned about their homework, I would click this. And you see, Pear Deck inserted the slide, what did you learn from your homework? So that is basically the beginning of the lesson. There's also a lot of slides that Pear Deck already prepared regarding assessments, charts, and more. So here are some of the slides, and you can see actually. So say teaching the lesson and want to see how well do you understand what you just covered? then basically you would click one of these, and then on the screen, I can see how students are understanding the material. And here, like, for example, if I want to change it and make it my own, so how do you understand the material covered about um, Charter of Rights, which I'll be covering soon in civics? Okay. And then the student can pick it, so you can edit the slides to tailor it to your own. And you can see like really good use of graphics, maps, and so on. And I'm going to give more examples. So let's go back, and then you have the end of the lesson. And here basically it gives the opportunity for students to do reflections, for you to like do an exit ticket. And so here is some examples of basically, here's one. Pretend your friend was absent from class today. Write what you would say if you had to explain the lesson to your friend. And you can see how really well done they are. Okay, let's go back. Next is critical thinking, and it's really important that you have your students practice these skills daily. And so basically, you want students to make connections to their daily lives. You want students, like if you if you study like the Bono um, hats, basically you want students to consider different viewpoints. So like in my civics class, what would be the left wing view, what would be the right wing view, so students can look at it from different perspectives. And actually, this is really good, is about wonderings that students have. So this is a really excellent tool too. Okay, so that is critical thinking slides. And a lot of times, so you not only basically can prepare the slides beforehand, but sometimes you might, for example, say this slide, pedagogy before technology. Tech gives the quietest student a voice. So basically, because students, when they type in their feedback, um, it's basically anonymous, so that students aren't afraid to be embarrassed. Because I find I teach, high school students, and a lot of times students do not speak up because they're afraid to look dumb in front of their peers. So students basically, with Pear Deck, because it's anonymous, they can feel comfortable about typing in how they feel without being afraid that somebody will look at their answer and say, "Oh, that's so silly what you wrote." So, for example, if this slide, I could right away um, say to you, or like the teachers that are listening to this, basically, I update this slide, and what happened here is now going through the slides, the students can write their response. Basically, do they agree? Tech gives the quieter students voice, and then I can see feedback from all the students instead of just the 2 or 3 that are brave enough to speak in class. Or it also gives the option for, instead of typing, if students are more comfortable, they can also draw their answer, or you can give them options like multiple choice. So here we'll give a example. So you could say option yes, no, maybe. And so I just upgraded this slide. And so you can see now the students can give an option whether yes, they agree with the statement. Tech gives the student, quite a student, a voice. No, they disagree, or they're not too sure. So depending on what you feel is most appropriate, you can, do multiple choice. You can link a website. So for example, if I click this, next, um, say there's a website on Student Voice. And so I'm changing this again. And so you can see right there, students can just click that right in the slide, and then they can browse about Student Voice. So with Peer Deck, when students are there, so in my classroom, um, I've I have Chromebooks for all the students. So students, they would be all seeing the screen that say I'm shown right now, so that students are not distracted because they are all focused on this specific slide, and they're all in this case, for example, they're clicking the website, or what we did earlier. If I had a multiple choice answer, they would all be clicking which of the multiple choice answers they felt was the most appropriate. Okay. And so actually let's go back to the presentation. So you could see the slides I added. And so, like, for example, I if you, um, I did a workshop on Pear Deck earlier, and what I wanted to find out was who was in my audience. So basically, teachers, they would basically drag a dot. Like, are they teaching mostly grade sixes? So if they were, and drag the dot here, and then I would see their dots. And so basically, I would be seeing dots all over, and then I could tailor my workshop to, if I'm seeing a lot of, so basically it's a heat map. And so if I saw a lot of dots in this area, mostly here, and then I know I'm doing a workshop to mostly secondary teachers, so tailored to secondary teachers. And I love how the heat map allows you at a glance to see really quickly who the audience is. The other thing is, like, how it's often said that image is like 1,000 words, and so basically with this, it allows students to draw, like, and so draw image and to communicate. If they're much more into visual, um, basically displays instead of words, it gives them an option, but then they can also type in text. So this is from the workshop I did earlier. What do you want to achieve from this session? So you could see I'm using that slide where students, or in teachers in this case, they type in basically what they wish to learn, and I can at a glance see all the feedback from the teachers and see what I need to focus on. So what do you think is the biggest barrier to engagement in your classroom? And so this is a slide I use basically to see, I mean, what are the major challenges that teachers face? So what I found is that a lot of students, they're afraid to speak up, and it's about having, like the shy students participate in class and have their voices heard, so that it's not only three students that are basically having dominating the conversation in class. And so and also, marginalized students, for example, in having them, participate more in class. So what kind of activities do you do in class? Lectures, quizzes, group work, vocabulary. So I had the teachers basically pick the activities. And so what's really good about Pear Deck is Pear Deck allows group work, collaboration, allows you to do quizzes. And so what's really good about the quizzes when you do it on Pear Deck is that instead of like handing it out on paper, students do it and then they get it back the next day. Right away, they can receive feedback from you regarding, regarding how they did, basically, and which means a lot more to them to get immediate feedback. And as you know, especially in this generation, students these days expect immediate feedback because that's the world that they live in today. So what are the real benefits of active learning? Which of these matter to you? So 6% point increase in achievement on active in classrooms using active learning techniques. So, and this is what Pear Deck really does, is that it gets students involved in the lesson. So it's not just you're doing a Google slide presentation and like a lecture and students just listen and they're not participating. You can see with the Pear Deck where in my presentation, slide after slide, students are expected to provide feedback and they're expected to be involved in your lesson instead of just sitting there and receiving your lesson. Also, there's 50% reduction in achievement gap between less and more affluent students because there is a higher rate of participation. And what we find out is when all students are participating, they're learning a lot more. And the other thing too is that in terms of gender equality, there's 100% reduction in achievement gap because all students are very much involved regardless of the gender. So if you're on Twitter, you can get a lot more information, especially on the Twitter handle Pear Deck. Also, use the hashtag share the pair. So I'm just going to play a short little YouTube video about Pear Deck for Google Slides.
Hi, we're excited to tell you that you can add the power of Pear Deck to Google Slides. Imagine if you could engage every student in your class. What if you could see instantly who's with you, who's struggling to keep up? That's the power of Pear Deck, a formative assessment tool designed by teachers and integrated with Google Classroom to support 100% student engagement. Pear Deck brings your slides to life with interactive questions that can be added to any presentation. We're making it easier than ever to bring the power of Pear Deck to your class. Start with Google Slides, get the Pear Deck Google Slides add-on, and add interactive questions or formative assessments throughout your slide deck. When you're ready, be sure to present with Pear Deck. Your students will join your Pear Deck session from any device with a web browser. Direct them to peardeck.com/join and enter the session code to begin. As you advance your slides, students will be prompted to answer your questions, and their answers will appear on your teacher dashboard in real time. Answers can be displayed anonymously on the classroom projector. So instead of worrying about getting the right answer and feeling silly in front of peers, your students are putting ideas out there in a safe, anonymous way, discussing and learning from each other. And that's just the beginning of what you can do with Pear Deck and Google Slides. 100% student engagement is just a deck away.
Okay. So then, actually, I like you to like try Pear Deck in your classroom. I mean, just like what we were talking earlier about active learning, the best way to do is by trying, and and tweet me, basically my Twitter handle, JLay02, about your experiences using Pear Deck. And really, I think you're really going to love the experience using Pear Deck in your classroom. One thing too is in my classroom, I use Chromebooks, but it also works with cell phones. I find it's a better experience with Chromebooks because the screen is bigger. So there's a higher engagement rate because of the larger screen. But I know not all classes are able to get access to like Chromebooks. So cell phones work well too. I mean, one of the advantages of using a cell phone instead of a Chromebook is that it's much easier actually to draw with a cell phone instead of a Chromebook. So Pear Deck allows teachers to make any presentation interactive, so every single student can actively participate from their own device. So it can be any type of device. Like students could use, like, for example, if they use an iPad instead. And every student answers no matter what kind of learner. So sometimes students think they have to answer because nobody else will or no one else can. They go through school thinking they're always right and never hearing another opinion. And that's the advantage for students that are usually the ones always speaking up in class, because now instead of just hearing people similar to them, they're hearing all students that usually don't speak up in class, and hearing different viewpoints, which is really important. You can also see each individual answer, so you know who needs more guidance. So for example, if you use the premium version, this allows, which is the paid version, what it does is, like, you're presenting and you're presenting on the screen. You can use like your own personal device, your say Android or your iPhone device, and you can see what student answered, what their specific answer was. And so then it allows you to see specifically, say, like, Bailey didn't really get this concept, so you need to spend more time with Bailey on this. But just like, this is only available on the premium version. So we're going to take a look at examples. And so I just went briefly through the beginning of lessons, the bell ringers, and do nows. And so if you're teaching, for example, a history class, why do you think advanced civilization was able to grow in the Fertile Crescent? Students here can, this is a slide where they can write their response. Now, I'm going to give you another example of one during the lesson. And this is where students can think, discuss, and apply their knowledge. And basically this gives you a chance to do formative assessment. And instead of like, as I mentioned earlier, with like a paper test, you're getting instant feedback right away as to what the student's understanding is. So, for example, like I teach a essentials math class, and so I and it's what I find with my students, lack of understanding is number sense. So I could use Bear Deck for them to estimate how many miles it is to the moon, or you could use that in a science class. And so one of the options is students, with Pear Deck, you can see students entering a number, and then Pear Deck is going to be showing basically all the numbers that students enter on a graph. So that's very visual. Right away you can see basically how close students are, like, or how much off students are in terms of their understanding. What's really good is, if you're teaching um, basically science, it gives students the opportunity to label diagrams. So for example, here's a bee, and you can label the different parts. And right, once students do that, then you can bring up and show, if you wish, all the students and how they understand in terms of the different parts of a bee. So some of you are probably teaching math, and you're wondering, what specifically, and I'm teaching about graphing in math, and what can I use in Pear Deck that can help me using graphs? And so this is where, like, Pear Deck's graphing function, drawing function comes in, and students can easily use this to draw um, basically the function. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, then you can bring up the screen and see basically what all the students drew. And then I do this all the time, basically how students are feeling. But you don't want students to be lost. So you can, just like the earlier ones, here's another example of of having students express their feeling. And basically now you get the feedback instantaneously, and then you can understand, do I have to reteach some aspect? Now I've circled the nouns in yellow, circled the verbs in red, and basically here's a interactive slide where students are drawing in basically an English class, so you can see what can be done in terms of English. Draw lines to match to the answer. And so here is, like, for example, if you're teaching Spanish or French or so on, this is a slide that you can use to teach that. In example of geography, draw the flag, drag the flag. So basically you would go here, drag the flag, and then place the red flag to where Germany is. Okay. And so you could see, we're like, how many flags are on Germany, or if somebody put it on France. So you can see right away how they are understanding. Draw your dot to agree or disagree. And I use this a lot in my civics class to have them express their express whether they agree or disagree on an issue. And then what I do the next slide is have them actually explain in a short answer why they agree or disagree on a certain viewpoint. Start a mind map by drawing or typing anywhere. So you can see the use of Pear Deck to do mind maps. And I showed earlier sending students to websites. And then just want to go through again, reflecting, assessing, the end of the lesson, reflections and exit ticket. So this is a slide I find really useful. In 1 minute, write the most important thing from today's lesson. And this really helps students remember because by typing what they learned, reflection, what we learn as teachers about metacognition, this is so important in terms of retention of material. And type or draw 2 things that you learned from today's lesson. And so you saw like more simple slides, yes, no. It's really important to get your students to think critically. And so we saw the viewpoint slide. Get students to think about asking the questions, students to draw conclusions. And so now it's up to you, I mean, to try Pear Deck yourself. And I think you're really going to love it. So, so I'm going to be posting this presentation. If you have any questions, again, my Twitter handle is JLay02. Tweet me your questions. I would love to hear from you, your experiences using Pear Deck. And that's it. Thanks so much for joining my presentation about creating a blended learning environment, and hope to hear from you.